Check. 1, 2. All right, let's go.
Crypto DLT with MrConectr. Be sure to subscribe. Hit the notification bell for daily content. Let's go.
What's up, everybody? MrConectr back again doing another live stream. Hope you guys are doing good. We got the chat already rolling. Silver Days. Oh, appreciate the super chat. 589. Thank you, sir. Let's go, MrConectr. Ooh, I like that one. What a big supporter of the channel and everyone else in the chat as well. Lazer King, Angus Grimm, D Cartel. Good to see you guys. You know, the White House report for digital assets came out today, and it is super long, guys. So I'm going to try to read through this. I haven't even looked at it yet, to be honest. You know, the best way for me to get this stuff in is to kind of go over it with you guys. So we're going to kind of go over it together. We might skim through some of it, and we might analyze the rest of it. Who knows what it's going to entail tonight. There's 166 pages, so I doubt I'll get through all that. But we're going to do what we can do and kind of just hang out for a while and you know, see what it's all about. So we expected this to come out per the executive order earlier this year from Trump. He wanted all of his agencies to report on him so they can kind of, looks like, gather a knowledge base on this stuff. A lot of it, skim through it just a little bit, especially the introduction. A lot of it's just a kind of a knowledge base, kind of talking about what's possible with digital assets. So I do like how they called it the digital asset report instead of the crypto report. Of course, we know that you know, Ripple was the first company to coin the phrase digital assets. The first ones I remember. All right, page 1, pump my bags up. Yeah, that's going to be the first one. Pump Lizard's bags up. All right, let's just read through the introduction right quick. Actually, the contents, we'll skim through it. Introduction, digital asset ecosystem, digital asset market structure, banking and digital assets, stable coins and payments, countering illicit finance, and taxation. We might not get through the last two, countering illicit finance. We know that we want them to police the activities and not the rails, you know, not the builders. Police the people who are using this stuff. And the taxation, we probably won't even touch on that tonight. But there's several cool things at the beginning we can check out together. First thing, they go through acronyms and abbreviations. It's good to see a lot of not just definitions, but, you know, guys, we've been in this stuff for a while, and we know a lot of this stuff, and most of the world doesn't know about any of this stuff. I mean, you've got things like DePIN, like decentralized physical infrastructure. Of course, DeFi, decentralized finance. We know all about that. But, you know, the White House, they had to put out their take on it and catch everybody else up to speed. So you guys are here before everyone else, basically. You know, it says the Clarity Act. And I did have a, I don't want to jump too far around, but did have the White House backing the Clarity Act, or the President's Working Group reaffirmed its support for the Clarity Act legislation essential to realizing President Trump's vision for the U.S. leadership in digital assets. With the Genius Act now in law, the Senate must act swiftly to advance a comprehensive market structure framework. And guys, sorry if there's a little bit of noise when I'm talking. I've got my extra air conditioner running, so kind of warm here, so we're going to keep that going. Okay, let's get back to the to this. You know, it's going through all the acronyms. Exchange traded product. We know all about that. Catching everybody up to speed. Lazer said definitions must be codified into law. That's right. We've never had definitions yet. So this is what it's all about. It even, just randomly looking around, MICA, markets in crypto assets, swap execution facilities, proof of stake, proof of work, post-quantum cryptography. Of course, we like peer-to-peer, and we know about over-the-counter, Office of Foreign Assets Control. I'm just kind of looking around, non-fungible tokens. So everything we've been going to YouTube School of Knowledge for throughout the years, you know, it's all kind of wrapped up, guys, and everyone else is catching up with us is what it looks like. What's up, William? Good to see you. Those of us that are here are the top 1%, just saying. Yeah, totally agree with that. The top 0.1%, says Angus. So yeah, if you guys want to get more in detail, I'm going to try to skim around the best I can because it's so long. Of course, it says strengthening the American leadership in digital asset technology. This is just kind of the message. The digital asset industry plays a crucial role in innovation and economic development in the U.S. as well as our nation's international leadership. It is therefore the policy of the admin to support the responsible growth of digital assets, blockchain tech, and related technologies across the sectors of the economy, including by protecting and promoting the ability of individual citizens and private sector entities alike to access and for use of lawful purpose of open blockchain networks without persecution. I like that, without persecution. And we know all about choke point 2.0 is persecution. So looks like they're right off the bat discussing the freedoms, the Fourth Amendment freedoms of this stuff, right? Including the ability to deploy and develop software, to participate in mining and validating, to transact with other persons without unlawful censorship. I like that. And to maintain self-custody of digital assets. How big is that, guys? Can you imagine if Kamala got in there? We would not be here where we're at. We would not be looking at this. So that's good. I mean, we've been worried about that for years. Maintaining self-custody. Is that we didn't even know if that was going to be allowed for a long time. And two, promoting and protecting the sovereignty of the United States dollar. Of course, that's important, including through actions to promote and develop the growth of lawful and legitimate dollar-backed stablecoins worldwide. Protecting and promoting fair and open access to banking services for all law-abiding individual citizens and private sector entities alike. And while I'm thinking of it, guys, a lot of these laws that are coming out, you know, with the Genius Act and the Clarity, it seems like these are for entities, especially with them maintaining self-custody and digital asset rights. You know, peer-to-peer, they're going to maintain peer-to-peer like cash. So if me and you are sending crypto to each other, as far as I know right now, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but it doesn't look like any laws apply to me and you. Now, all this is for entities that are going to be using and interacting with retail. So if you interact with a bank or a service provider somewhere, a fintech, you know, that's when all these laws and these AMLs and Bank Secrecy Act, that's when all this applies. And I don't know, I don't think they're going to regulate DeFi. You know, if it's just peer-to-peer DeFi, I don't know how they can require AML for any of that. I'm not an expert on that, though. But that's just my quick take on it. This is all for entities. And if you interact with the entities, that's when all these laws come into play, right? Where'd you pull the document from? It's whitehouse.gov. Actually, I think I clicked on Crypto Barbie's X post. She posted it, and she had a link for it. So providing regulatory clarity and certainty built on technology neutral regulations, frameworks that account for the emerging technologies, transparent decision making, and well-defined jurisdictional and regulatory boundaries. all of which are essential to supporting a vibrant and inclusive digital asset economy and innovation in digital assets, permissionless blockchains, and distributed ledger technologies. I saw Swartz said something earlier today about permissioned DEXs, and that's a new amendment on the XRP ledger where there's certain coins you got to have permission to trade them. And he was saying the market size of those may even be bigger than the mainnet DEX, the public DEX. And taking measures to protect Americans from the risk of CBDCs, which threaten the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States by including and prohibiting the establishment, issuance, circulation, and the use of CBDCs within the jurisdiction of the U.S. And this hereby established within the National Economic Council of the President's Working Group on Digital Asset Markets. The working group shall be chaired by the Special Advisor for AI and the Crypto Chair. Within 180 days of the date of this order, the working group shall submit a report to the President through the Assistant to the President for National Economic Policy, which shall recommend regulatory and legislative proposals that advance the policies established in this order. So we are at that 180 days now. Now that this is coming out, this is what you get from the earlier executive order. Williams chilling for the real, sitting in the top 8% of XRP nice and rocking the other ISO hardcore. Yep, get those ISO coins. They're the ones that can be used for ISO messaging, right? D, how about Family Bank and Trust? Yep, sit back and get you something to drink. Get you coffee or other beverage. I've got my coffee here. Actually, I'm just running out. I've got some water. Let's get into it. Staff acknowledgements. Okay, introduction. Read through this right quick. The American story is one of innovation from the railroads that linked the sea to shining sea, the internet that connected the entire world. American entrepreneurs have led the build out of the next generation technologies in every generation since our founding. Crypto should be no different. That's right. The working group endorses the notion that digital assets and blockchain tech can revolutionize not just America's financial systems, but systems of ownership and governance economy-wide. The American entrepreneurs who pioneer new industries using these technologies deserve both clarity and policies that affect their efforts and praise for the progress they've made. The working group further believes that the momentum underpinning crypto's development, largely grassroots, dedicated to building a more open and efficient financial system for all. That's what it's all about, a whole new financial system. And they're going to need these public rails, right? No president gave this movement the recognition it deserves until President Trump. As of June 2025, President Trump's approval rating, we don't care about that. And it's talking about how many citizens are into crypto. Just trying to skim through the best I can. 4.8 billion in crypto and blockchain startup-focused startups supporting industry forecasts of a 70% year-over-year increase in total venture dollars invested. The difference from prior years is stark. Talks about how bad the Biden admin was, and they were driving ventures overseas. Infrastructure migrated offshore. And of course, talking about how good Trump's doing for turning this around. American citizens and businesses should be able to own digital assets and use blockchain tech for lawful purposes without fear of prosecution. American entrepreneur software developers should have the liberty and the regulatory certainty to upgrade all sectors of our economy using these technologies. Congress should enact, Congress should codify principles. Financial FinCEN should evaluate and issue guidance. Policymakers and regulators should lay the groundwork for digital asset markets to become the deepest and most liquid in the world. We know Ripple's all about liquidity. The SEC should use their existing authorities to immediately enable the trading of digital assets at the federal level. Congress should enact legislation, CFTC, giving the CFTC clear authority to regulate spot markets and non-security digital assets. And we knew that was coming. CFTC should regulate spot markets. This legislation should permit both market regulators to engage in multiple businesses lines under the most efficient licensing structure possible. Policymakers should embrace digital finance as an option for individuals and investors to appreciate the extent to which the given software applications exercises control over their assets, is technologically capable of being modified, and operates with a centralized structure or management, and is logistically capable of complying with current regulatory obligations when undermining its regulatory treatment. Banking regulators should never again pursue the Biden administration's policies of Operation Chokepoint 2.0 and should instead embrace digital asset opportunities. Banking regulators should ensure that existing and new best practices or guidance or risk management and bank engagement are technology neutral, and expectations regarding and offering banking services do not discriminate against lawful businesses solely due to their industry. These regulators should relaunch crypto innovation efforts to provide clarity on these activities that banks want to pursue, with clear processes for considering additional activities. To support these efforts, the U.S. should adopt capital requirements for bank digital asset activities that accurately reflect the risk of the asset or the activity. The relevant federal banking regulators should provide clarity and transparency regarding the process for eligible institutions to obtain a banking charter. There you go. That's what Ripple and Circle are after right there. Or a reserve bank master account. Again, that's what Ripple's after. Read that again. The relevant federal banking regulators should provide clarity and transparency regarding the process for Ripple to become an eligible institution. That sounds good right there for Ripple and Circle. U.S. dollar-backed stablecoins represent the next wave of innovation in payments, and policymakers should encourage their adoption to advance U.S. dollar dominance in the digital age. Lazer King says these practices should not flip-flop every time new administration comes into power. That's right. Especially, well, I mean, that's why we need it codified into law. That's right, Lazer. We've got to have this Clarity Act passed. I hope the Senate gets it together and gets this to go through quick. Angus says Sologenic and Corium. Yeah, those are two powerhouses there. Some sleepers right there. All agencies to which Congress delegated responsibilities under the Genius Act should faithfully and expeditiously execute those responsibilities. Relevant agencies, including the Treasury, should promote the U.S. private sector leadership in responsible development of cross-border payments and financial market technologies. These agencies should also promote U.S. leadership in establishing international, legal, regulatory, and technological standards and best practices for new payment techs that reflect U.S. interests and values. Looks like America's leading the way, guys, in standards. It's all about the standards. Like Chris Larson said back in the day, the shipping containers, they were a mess. Shipping this boat size, all these different boat sizes with different container sizes until the world got together and agreed upon a standard, right? U.S. law enforcement agencies should have the tools and authority to hold those who use digital assets for illegal activities accountable. These tools should never be misused to target the lawful activities of law-abiding citizens. There we go. That's the Fourth Amendment right there. Congress should consider clarifying language regarding Bank Secrecy Act application to foreign located actors, taking into consideration the extent to which a foreign located actor's conduct and the effect of such conduct in the U.S. warrants reach of the law, of the U.S. law. So yeah, if they're going to interact with American citizens, they need their BSA compliancy. Treasury would or should undertake efforts to encourage greater information sharing between the private and public sectors to more efficiently target bad actors operating in the digital asset ecosystem. This information sharing must only be used for the purpose of prescribed in law of targeting illicit finance and terrorist activity. That's right, William. ISO is the standard for the messaging. And Treasury and the agencies to which it has delegated responsibility for the AML CFTC examination should identify areas of uncertainty for traditional financial institutions providing services to digital asset actors and digital asset services to customers. Agencies, including the Treasury and the federal banking agencies, should provide needed guidance and other materials to help clarify AML CFT obligations and expectations in regard to those actors in those sectors. What's up, Hero? MLETR, standard law. It's all about the standards. That's right. Federal tax policy should recognize unique characteristics of digital assets and address long-standing requests for guidance from investors and entrepreneurs. You know, guys, my hope is that we go to a flat rate sales tax and get rid of the income tax. And that would be perfect timing for digital asset to kind of take over. You shouldn't have to keep up with how much you owe a year later, you know? It should be done instantly at the time of sale, at the point of sale. And T Cartel says, yep, TikTok. So I doubt we're going to see much on that. But it would be kind of interesting to just read through this right quick. Treasury and the IRS should publish guidance on several topics, including the determination of adjusted financial statement income with respect to financial accounting, unrealized gains, and losses on investment assets. That doesn't sound good, does it? Let's read through that again. Treasury and the IRS should publish guidance on several topics, including the determination of adjusted financial statement income. Adjusted financial statement income with respect to financial accounting, unrealized gains, and losses on investment assets other than stock and partnership interest, whether wrapping and unwrapping transactions or taxable transactions, and de minimis receipts of digital assets. Well, let's hope like hell that they're not going to be taxing unrealized gains. It's kind of worrisome at face here that they're even mentioning unrealized gains, right? Of course, when you're still dealing with the old legacy system, you know, a lot of times they're gonna what they're gonna do is they're gonna need dollar values for these assets. So they're gonna take snapshots of the prices like 3 or 4 times a day in order to get dollar values on some of this stuff, so that they can insure it or whatever. What's up, Mojo? Good to have you back, my man. So that's kind of worrisome. With respect to financial accounting, unrealized gains and losses on investment assets. Or maybe that means without including unrealized gains. With respect to financial accounting, unrealized gains. Yeah, I know it's BS. So I'm a little worried about that. Let's keep reading. Treasury and the IRS should review previous issue guidance related to the timing of income from staking and mining to consider whether to clarify, modify, or reverse that guidance. So basically, this is just asking for guidance on all this from the Treasury and the IRS. They should publish guidance on several topics. And they should review, and the second one, review guidance related to the timing of the income from staking and mining. Congress should also enact legislation that adds digital assets to the list of assets subject to wash sale rules. It amends Section 1058 to provide that it applies to loans of actively traded fungible digital assets and treats digital assets as a new class of assets subject to modified versions of tax rules applicable to securities or commodities for federal income tax purposes. So hopefully, guys, this is the way of addressing the problems. And they're asking these agencies to review their guidance and come up with new guidance right here on all these subjects. So hopefully this means that they're going to fix a lot of this stuff. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around it all right now, just reading it out. All recommendations and further details on the above can be found through the report. Much of the discussion leading up to the recommendations issues a baseline of understanding of crypto and its novel characteristics. The following box provides an overview. All right, let's see. Crypto 101. Do we need to read through Crypto 101? This might be just for the newbies. Let's check it out right quick. The broader ecosystem of crypto derives its name from cryptocurrencies. Imagine that. Okay, we know a lot about peer-to-peer and Satoshi. Bitcoin's implementation of DLT solves the double spend. We know about that. Let's skim through this. A distributed ledger among all participants in the network. We know about blocks and nodes and cryptographically prove the sender's ownership of the funds. Okay, this is taking it back to definitely 101. It talks about private keys associated with the corresponding address. As such, digital asset custody is focused primarily on protecting the private keys from being leaked, hacked, or lost. To facilitate storage of private keys, developers created different types of wallets. Software wallets hold the private keys in a password protected encrypted file and provides capabilities for users to sign transactions. Hardware wallets include a software package on a dedicated hardware device used only for storing keys and sending transactions to the blockchain. These wallets can be hot, meaning they operate on a live device connected to the internet. Warm, meaning they maintain partial or selective internet connectivity. Or cold, meaning they have no internet connection. And this is just a diagram explaining the difference between those software wallets and hardware wallets. We kind of know about that. It talks about oracles connecting external data sources to the blockchain networks. This enables smart contracts to execute on-chain agreements based on real-world prices and events. Smart contracts make dApps possible as tools for trading, lending, earning rewards, and other activities. Some dApps serve as cross-chain bridges, which transfer assets or data across blockchain networks. Assets that exist on one chain and pass through a cross-chain bridge to be represented on another are referred as wrapped. And the ecosystem that operates around dApps is broadly known as decentralized finance, DeFi. some traditional finance TradeFi institutions have explored using contracts to power new financial products or streamline agreements with counterparties. They often build these products on permissioned blockchains, which allow administrators to control or reverse parts of on-chain transactions. And guys, we know that permission blockchains started out with Ethereum. We know there's private Ethereum blockchains. And we also discovered that you can send value from the private Ethereum blockchain to the public chain. And therefore, you can send it out through the Ethereum bridges. You could even go through something like, Axelar, and make it all the way to the XRP ledger. So everything's going to connect to everything. And they're figuring out all the cross-chain connectivity by using oracles. This just gives an example here of an oracle network. You've got advanced applications that use data providers, financial infrastructure, government systems, public blockchains, and permission blockchains. And they've got a cross-chain oracle network sitting between the public blockchain and the permission blockchain. It's important to acknowledge that blockchain technology and the opportunities it provides did not emerge from TradeFi or Washington, D.C. think tanks. Conversations to open internet forums and mailing lists were launchpad for figures like Satoshi to outline and debate core principles of new decentralized systems of trust. Throughout the report, there are references to original posts and anchor to the topics discussed. It's kind of neat seeing them catching up with us, right? Hebrew says HBAR is big on that. Can even wrap BTC. Yeah, they're real big on that. They're wrapping a lot of coins. Let's see. Let me see if I can rotate this. And yeah, this is just a phase. The phases of cryptocurrency and digital asset market adoption. Of course, the first one was Bitcoin. From 2008 to 2010. From 2011 to 2013, it shows Ripple here. The inception of Ripple, Namecoin, Litecoin. Of course, they put Ripple at the bottom, kind of hiding it here. Imagine that. And the exchanges came about like Coinbase, Kraken, BitGo, Bitstamp. 2014, 2016, we had Mt. Gox and Silk Road, IBM, Hyperledger R3, Gemini, Circle, Ethereum. 2017, we had Tron, CryptoKitties, Tether, Binance, CoinList, Tezos, Bancor. 2018, 2019. Some big ones were Fireblocks, CashApp, Robinhood. 2020, 2021, OpenSea, Polkadot, Visa, PayPal. 2022 to 2023, of course, FTX, Fiasco, BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager. A lot of centralized entities here on this one. 2024, BlackRock got in, VanEck, Invesco, a lot of the bigger players, 21 shares. And it just kind of shows, summarizes these eras. All right, that was chapter 1. That was just an intro. What's up, Rye Guy? Good to see you. So the intro was pretty good. Crypto 101 and breaking down a few things for the newbies. Not you guys. You guys are all about it. You guys have been here. You guys know all about this stuff already. It looks like this is for the rest of the world to catch up to a lot of this stuff. Digital asset ecosystem is section 2. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. That's right. You got to leave those third parties out. We need peer-to-peer. Digital signature provided part of the solution, but main benefits are lost if the trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. We propose a solution to the double spending problem using peer-to-peer. Okay, this is Satoshi's. We'll skip the rest of that. That's just kind of from his white paper. since the launch of Bitcoin, crypto ecosystem has grown to include far more digital asset currencies. Smart contracts, computational efficiency, consensus mechanism, and the open source spirit of the developer community resulted in proliferation of digital assets and methods to transfer them. And it just goes through what are digital assets. We know what those are. Market size and trends, crypto market cap throughout time. Shows a couple of the bubbles there. Just talks about their values. I'm going to skip over whatever we can because, guys, this thing's 166 pages long. So we're just going to kind of get the most out of it as we can. Kind of jumping around a little bit. It talks about the introduction of NFTs, represents loyalty to a team or in-game assets. Activity in digital asset markets often characterized as borderless, reflecting the ease of transacting worldwide. While this offers significant benefits, it makes levels of activities in specific jurisdictions hard to measure. That said, the number of successful monthly transactions on blockchain reaches highs of 3.8 billion in early 2025, a 96% increase year over year around the return of the Trump admin. Market participants. Digital asset ecosystem includes a range of market participants. You've got retail, institutional, centralized trading platforms, decentralized protocols, and development teams, where developers and protocols associated with the tech that underpins the digital asset market, including blockchain, wallets, and smart contracts, and other dApps, and the blockchain network support, like validators, miners, and stakers, and node providers. It just goes through what issuers are, retail participants, recent trends and retail interest in crypto. There's that graph. Institutional investors, centralized trading platforms. We know what all of these are. Decentralized protocols. We know what those are. DEXs. Let's see if it has any info on DEXs. DEXs are one of the most popular DeFi applications, leveraging smart contracts to facilitate the trading of digital assets. Well, not necessarily right there. Ripple's DEX is built in. It's a layer 1. It's the first DEX that was, it is the first DEX, and it's built into the native blockchain. It does not use smart contracts like Ethereum uses to add a DEX, a layer 2 on top of Ethereum. There's a big difference there. Now, I'm sure the XRP Ledger has something similar to a smart contract, but it's baked into the protocol itself, unlike Ethereum. But it uses smart, but they, I guess the other ones leverage smart contracts to facilitate the trading of digital assets. DEX activity has grown significantly, with spot trading volume surging from less than 1% of SEX volume, which is a centralized exchange volume, in 2020, to now we're at 30% of SEX volume. So that's like 30% DeFi or DEXs and 70% centralized exchanges, trading on centralized exchanges. Wow, I didn't know it came up that much. That's good. And I think that's going to keep going up and up and up, right? The less need we have for centralized exchanges, especially when we start getting paid in stable coins. Why would we even need that on-ramp? Why can't we trade everything on a DEX, right? That's kind of my hope. In the first quarter of 2025, the monthly volume of transactions on DEXs averaged just under $400 billion. The architecture of DeFi, understanding DeFi technology stack. Right here, you've got the application interface layer, wallet apps, protocol front ends, aggregators, command line interface. Then the broadcast layer, the remote procedure call nodes. They broadcast transactions to the network. You've got the smart contract protocol layer. Core smart contracts, foundational, non-upgradable, automated market makers, lending pools, liquid staking. You've got the asset layer, the native token, fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, and then the base layer, peer-to-peer blockchain network, consensus protocol. And then it goes through what each one of those are. Hero is R3/4 settler built in within XDC. I don't think so. I might be wrong about that, but as far as I know, R3 is separate than what it's using, which is the XDC. Not a big expert on XDC, but I do have a few of those. Example, liquidity pool. All right. You guys know what liquidity pools are, AMM pools. Developers, protocol teams, blockchain developers. We know what they are. DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. I expect these to kind of ramp up after legislation. DAOs are community governed admin systems. Kind of like the next evolution of a corporation or a LLC or a sole proprietorship. The new ones are DAOs, where we can all chip in and run the company, right? We might see things like, I like F1. I was even imagining the other day an F1 team that's owned by a DAO. And we could all make decisions and vote on decisions for, which motor did we want to use. Somebody could come up with that, DAOs typically hold and manage collective financial resources in corporate treasuries to fund the operations, initiatives, and rewards. The holders make governance decisions such as collateral policies and fee structures. Blockchain network support, protocol consensus mechanisms. We know about proof of work, proof of stake. And there's many more out now, like proof of history, proof of location. You've got mining and staking. We know all about that. Staking as a service. Here's something I've been talking about, liquid staking. We repeat it again. We saw on the SEC roundtable, they were talking about sending your coins to a qualified custodian for safekeeping, and then duplicating the same coins and sending them out for use in staking protocols and DeFi. Staking as a service consists of a third party that stakes assets and manages the technological aspects of staking in exchange for a management fee. Like you pay, some of you guys stake on Coinbase or stake on Uphold, a centralized exchange. You're not going to get as much back rather than staking it in your cold wallet, on chain, you doing it. Of course, the centralized exchange is going to keep some of that profit. But liquid staking is a financial product offered by large stakers who issue a receipt token. It's like a derivative token, like a wrap token that users can redeem for their amount staked on, and any rewards trade on a secondary market. So that's how they're going to safekeep these coins. I can see them choosing a liquid staking protocol to safeguard the coins at a local custodian, and then be able to send them out and do whatever you need to on the DeFi side, staking side. And mentioning that, I did have my liquid staking pick up today. Yeah, what a coincidence. XPRT, that's IBC liquid staking. That one's up 17% today. Nice. What's up, Rusty Nuts? Oh, okay, like Scepter with Flare. Okay, I think I did see something on that. That makes sense. Yeah, there's a few liquid staking options that I think I've seen like three or four out there. Probably more now. Excuse me. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? Get a sip of water. When a token holder delegates its staking to a validator, the act of delegation occurs via smart contracts and protocol level mechanisms. Assuming the token holder self-custodies the digital assets, the act of delegation typically does not entail transferring control of the token. The token remains locked in smart contracts. The delegated validator handles the technical requirements of stake, and the token holder acts as a capital provider like capacity. When rewards are distributed, they come into possession of both the token holder and the designated validator in proportions determined by the arrangement between the two. No entity is transmitting funds on behalf of another so long as rewards are distributed on-chain via protocol logic or smart contracts. Yeah, that's definitely, we're definitely ahead of the game knowing about this liquid staking. Delegated validator handles all the technical requirements. The U.S. is home to several crypto exchanges and custodians that operate validators on behalf of their customers in recent years. Industry landscape is also includes non-custodial staking infrastructures. Yeah, that's all about centralized staking protocols or centralized staking. Let's keep going. We know about that. Key infrastructure providers, oracles, DEX aggregators, liquidity pool from multiple DEXs and market providers to provide efficient trading for participants to avoid issues associated with liquidity fragmentation. DEX aggregators, that's a big deal there. Especially if you've got coins that live on several different public blockchains. You know, why should one price on one blockchain for the same asset, if it lives on multiple blockchains, why should it be different prices? And it's going to be different prices if you do not have DEX aggregators. We've got bridge providers, enable the transfer of assets or data between two or more blockchain networks, allowing for interoperability across blockchain ecosystems. That's like Chainlink, Axlar, bridges. Node providers, you know what nodes are, on-chain data providers. You know, pricing, that's something that's very under-talked about. Supply data such as asset prices from blockchain and off-chain providers to decentralized applications supporting the autonomous function of DeFi. So prices are huge. There's been a lot of people that have been hurt by incorrect pricing, especially from these oracles. We saw on the show about a month ago a stablecoin. Someone rigged the stablecoin pricing by swapping out at an unequal rate from one stablecoin to the other. And when they did that, it threw off the pricing for other assets in the pool on the other chain. And that was involving Chainlink. So the prices, and what they did, they had to do a quick fix for that. They had to take an average price instead of the exact price in that moment in time, right? So they had to start using average pricing for stable coins. So someone definitely figured out how to rig that by depegging the stablecoin price. Of course, whatever's pegged on that depegged stable coin. Because we've got so many different stable coins now. Whatever's depegged, it's going to throw off that other pair, the other asset in that pair, I mean. Sui has liquid staking as well. Cool. Yeah, that's all of them need it. Every chain out there needs it. Well, not every chain. You look at something like XRP, and that's going to be like the main settlement coin. You know? And these other chains are going to be using that settlement coin, right? Digital identity providers, smart contract auditors. That's good. Smart contracts have several attack vectors. There's lots of ways that a smart contract can be attacked. It better be audited good. There's attacks that wait on a specific block. It might be a month from now, and then it hits once it gets to that block. Front-end user interface operators allow individuals to easily interact with decentralized apps and blockchain protocols, usually through web-based portals or mobile apps. Some good info here. Key regulators and oversight. We've got federal market regulators such as the SEC and the CFTC. CFTC is going to regulate the spot markets. And I don't think that includes DEXs. Now, it might include permission DEXs, but how are they going to regulate a DEX on a public blockchain, right? What's that, Bradley B? Just going over this digital asset report. Pretty good info we've already gone over. We've been kind of skimming around stuff we already know. There's a lot of crypto 101 stuff in here. But yeah, it just goes through the regulators. Zabek's doing good. The SEC enforces securities laws. So the ones that are not securities are going to be regulated by the CFTC. Additionally, self-regulatory organizations, SRO. That's an interesting concept there. An SRO is like the ICE, isn't it? The exchanges, all the stock exchanges, like NASDAQ and all that, they regulate themselves. They're self-regulatory organizations. And that's what they were trying to get with the Brooklyn Project, which was the Ethereum gang. They were trying to create a self-regulatory organization and regulate themselves. So you can understand why there's a lot of leeway, a lot of ways to rig it too as well. You see the problems in the current stock market, including the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, and the National Reserves Association, NFA, help to regulate and oversee certain financial industry participants. Given the respective statutory functions, the SEC maintains oversight of FINRA, while the CFTC maintains oversight of the NFA. These self-regulatory organizations generally aim to establish and enforce standards, guidelines, and best practices that promote integrity. They're saying these SROs, but these are government organizations. These aren't SROs. This is FINRA, NFA. Well, maybe that is non-government. National Futures Association? Yeah, that's probably non-government. Maybe that is a SRO. I'm not familiar with that. NFA, National Futures Association. I would think that should be like a government entity instead of a SRO. For as far as I know, an SRO is not a government entity, a self-regulatory organization. That's like a company that gets to regulate itself, right? And banking regulators, the primary federal depository institution regulators are the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, of course, and the Office of Comptroller of Currency, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Interesting how the FDIC is a corporation. That's because the Fed is a private entity, right? That's why it's called a corporation. FDIC. And the National Credit Union Administration, the NCUA. That's the one Metallicus has been in talks with, the NCUA, for all the credit unions. The Federal Reserve Board of Governors supervises state chartered banks that are members of the Federal Reserve System, state member banks, banks holding companies, certain U.S. operations of foreign banking organizations, savings and loan holding companies, financial holding companies, and financial market utilities designated by the Financial Stability Oversight Council as systemically important. So some of you guys out there already have holding companies, especially for your digital assets. Or, a holding company is a company that owns other companies. So it's a good way, if you're just getting into setting up businesses, is to create a business as a holding company at inception, and then create another business that holding company owns. And some of you are even creating trusts that own the holding company that owns the smaller business. And the reason for that is you want to separate your monies, right? So they're not at risk. You've got all your money in one company, then all that money is at risk. That's why you want to separate it and have different entities doing different things, different businesses doing different things. Oh, Bradley B with a 1999 bomb. Appreciate that, Bradley. Is it back to the moon? Keep it up. Great job, Mr. C. Appreciate that, my man. Good to have you as always, Mr. Bradley B. I hadn't seen you on the boardroom in a while. I got on there last night for a little bit, made a late entrance to hang out with the guys. Thank you, sir. The Office of Comptroller of Currency is the primary prudential regulator for the national banks. Federal savings, we know all about that. FDIC and the NCUA regulates the credit unions. The Department of Treasury, FinCEN, the BSA, of course, all this is going to be in line as usual. OFAC for foreign assets. IRS, responsible for collecting revenue to fund government agencies and programs for enforcing federal tax laws. Audits and criminal investigation. For the states, many state. Remember, right quick, the Genius Act. So if the stablecoin is under $10 billion in market cap, then it will be regulated. It will need to apply for a state license, stablecoin license. If it's going to be over $10 billion in market cap, it needs a federal stablecoin license. Many state financial services agencies have applied state-level money transmitter laws to digital asset custodians and trading platforms. Such laws generally require these intermediaries register as money transmitters with the agency to provide services to customers located within the relevant state. However, some states exempts digital asset transactions from their money transmission laws. And firms engaging exclusively in digital asset transactions may not, in those states, be subject to licensing requirements. Other states have established bespoke regulatory regimes for digital assets. For example, in New York State Department of Financial Services. And guys, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised that some of these states are already running their own internal sidechain ledgers. You know, something like XRPL is open source. Anyone can download it and run their own version of it, right? That's what Bank of America was doing. They were using a private version of the XRPL to run all their internal transactions. And why wouldn't they just wait on that cross-chain amendment to be put in to send money away out of the walled garden, out of the sidechain? Market activities. New tokens can be issued through subsequently traded. Existing digital assets can be saved or lent or staked to power consensus mechanisms. Some non-fungible digital assets can be collected. There are additional use cases like payments, which can be discussed at length. A few major market activities that require further regulatory clarity are considered below. Issuance, the initial stage of the life cycle of a digital asset at its issuance. So projects often disclose how their token issuance process occurs in their white paper. We know about that. We like to look at these coins and see how many they have, how many is in circulation. If they have an ICO or not, initial coin offering. Let's read more about that. In the early days of digital asset industry, projects used an ICO to publicly offer tokens to investors, normally in exchange for other digital assets. In general, there have been numerous methods by which digital assets can or have been issued or otherwise made available to U.S. persons in a particular blockchain ecosystem. Over the past several years, the issuance or launch methods of digital assets have taken many forms, including ICOs, airdrops, and forks. That's the whole chicken and egg problem. That's you got to get liquidity out there. You want liquidity in your chain. So the hardest thing is to getting your coins out into the public. So that's what a lot of these companies have been doing for a decade, right? Trying to get the coins out. If you look at something like Atom on the Cosmos, it's $4.44 now. It's been like that for years. But check this out. Where's the metrics for it? Their circulating supply is 390 million coins. Not bad at that price. 444, 390 million coins. Guys, that's all the coins are in circulation. Every single Atom token is out in the world. There's none being held back anymore. It's already been distributed. So we're kind of over a precipice right there. So that's why I'm bullish on Atom here lately. I know the price has been stagnant. Look at the all-time chart on it right quick. I mean, it's done nothing compared to the high of $43. That's a token where all the coins have been distributed out into the world. Liquidity, 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 says Bradley B. That is the secret sauce, yeah. I remember Ripple even thought about the idea of airdropping tokens to every Indian citizen. But something happened, they went against that. I guess that would be kind of, can't give it to one country, not give it to the other, I guess. Within the United States, offering of digital asset securities are subject to registration requirements of the SEC Act and corresponding SEC regulations. The issuance of digital asset securities must either be registered under the Securities Act or rely on available exemption from registration. We saw, what is his name, Atkins, the new SEC chairman? He's carving out technological exemptions from securities. So he did say that they were going to be making exemptions. That sounds good for us. Coins that would normally be security that faced, but because of their technology and what they're able to do, he's going to make exemptions for them. The listing of derivatives contract on a digital asset that meets the definition of a commodity falls within the Commodity Exchange Act and the CFT's regulatory framework. However, with certain minor exceptions, the U.S. lacks a comprehensive regulatory framework for the issuance and trading of non-security digital assets. Federal security laws provide a comprehensive regulatory framework for raising capital in the public and private sector's markets in the U.S. As noted, any offer or sale of digital asset security must either be pursuant to the SEC Act or rely on exemption or safe harbor from registration. Registration exemptions and safe harbors under the SEC include Regulation D, Regulation A, Regulation S, and Regulation crowdfunding. Looks like there's several types of exemptions. Regulation D exemption, Regulation A exemption, Regulation S. Okay. They're going to carve out a few. Looks like. Collectively, these crowdfunding, that's interesting there. Coins that have been crowdfunded. Collectively, these exemptions provide a wide range of capital raising methods to issuers and provide existing frameworks for the SEC to draw upon as it considers using the existing preemptive authorities for offerings of digital asset securities. Several groups develop frameworks to structure private offerings in the digital asset tokens. These frameworks are generally structured as investment contracts with a digital asset pre-sale component. Examples of such frameworks include simple agreement for future tokens, equity plus token warrant, and convertible notes with token purchase options. Several different frameworks there to structure private offerings. So these are new frameworks, it looks like. These frameworks are generally structured as an investment contract with a digital asset pre-sale component. So this is within the SEC, different ways to distribute your token. A simple agreement for future tokens, like a pre-sale, the equity plus token warrant, and the convertible notes with a token purchase option. As digital assets gain popularity, blockchain-based projects issued tokens to the public as a method to raise capital, often through ICOs. While these issuances generally did not occur within the existing regulatory framework of federal securities laws, they provided non-accredited investors with the ability to obtain these tokens at issuance. Yep. All that's going to be grandfathered in. It looks like it happened. That's the whole point of having no regulations, is to get grandfathered in to get your tokens while you can, right? That's what it looks like. Airdrops are a mean for issuers of digital asset tokens to dismantle their tokens in exchange for no or nominal considerations. We know what airdrops are. Trading. So trading is the most commonly acted in the digital asset ecosystem. We know how to trade and put in our orders. Next, it goes through custody and wallets. We know what custody is. We know what wallets are. If the digital assets at issue are securities, the assortment of regulated intermediaries are responsible for safeguarding investor assets. Customers who use broker-dealers registered with the SEC to custody their securities and related cash benefit from protections provided by securities laws under the Customer Protection Rule. Clearance and settlement. Transactions conducted on-chain or from blockchain or addressed to one to another are expected to resolve or settle simultaneously with the time frame of the transaction validation. And of course, that's how it works. We know about this. I don't want to go over something that I think everybody kind of knows about. If the digital assets are securities, though, the transaction, this is probably important here, the transactions may undergo a clearing process whereby obligations between the buyer and seller are netted and confirmed. Traditionally, through a clearing agency. You know, securities, they're going to have different laws on securities. Of course, that's the SEC. Different than the CFTC. That's where you got your Corium comes in, guys. That's the compliance layer for the XRP ledger for securities. Sologenic. Bradley B says if Ripple becomes a bank, then Why wouldn't we have Ripple custody our XRP? This may be the ultimate play. Agreed. That could be a good play there, yeah. To me, Ripple wants to become a bank so they can get the cheaper T-bills, right? When you're a bank, you're allowed to not have the full backing for the T-bills. Isn't that interesting? So they can have, that's the introduction of fractional reserve stablecoins right there. It's a way of hiding money printing, right? Like that's been going on. So that's no different with Ripple. They're going to want to do the same thing. Any entity is going to want to be a bank to do that. So they don't have to have they're going to have the T-bills backing the stablecoins, but the reserve that they say they have, these T-bills are going to be, it's not like they have to actually buy it. They just have to hold the reserve for the T-bill, from what I understand. What's up, Matthew? Tailcoin is the first digital crypto bank. Oh yeah, Tailcoin's a OG in the space. So now we're on digital asset securities. The traditional can go through a clearing agency. Section 17A of the SEC Act requires an entity to register with the SEC prior to performing functions of a clearing agency. It looks like you're still going to have to go through a clearing agency, right? Subject to certain exemptions and exclusions. Two common functions of registered clearing agencies are functions of a central counterparty or a central securities depository. In regard, the SEC's crypto task force focusing on helping the SEC draw clear regulatory lines, including consideration of these issues surrounding the clearance of and settlement of digital asset securities. While the CFTC's regime is listed derivatives also contains a centralized clearing requirement. The regime is not applicable to spot or cash transactions in digital commodities. So there's your separation right there. This is not applicable for digital commodities and securities that get exemptions, right? But if they are a security, it looks like they're still going to have to be processed through a central counterparty, like Texture Capital, a broker-dealer, which uses the Corium and Sologenic blockchains, right? Like if it's a security on metal blockchain, that's where the KYC comes in. When the actual asset is a security, you've got different laws for it, and it's breaking it down right here. Absent congressional action, non-security digital assets are not subject to federal regulatory framework surrounding the clearance and settlement of related transactions. DLT, however, may be used in the clearance and settlement of digital assets and may not lend itself to traditional clearance and settlement regulation, which is focused on centralized providers of clearance and settlement services. Well, that sounds like it goes against what I just said. Let's read that again. Absence of congressional action. So if Congress doesn't act, non-security digital assets, let's say XRP, non-security digital asset. XRP is not subject to a federal regulatory framework surrounding the clearance and settlement of related transactions. DLT, however, distributed ledger technology, may be used in the clearance and settlement of digital assets and may not lend itself to traditional clearance of and settlement regulations. I think they're just saying DLT in general, if it's not securities. And may not lend itself to traditional clearance and settlement regulation, which is focused on centralized providers. So you can kind of see how they're separating everything. Centralized needs to be regulated. You have to either be regulated by the SEC or the CFTC. If you're security, you're SEC. If you're anything else, it's the CFTC, spot markets. Matthew says loan protocol and metal blockchain as well must hold. Yeah, definitely must hold. I like those both. Lending, borrowing, and collateral. Prime brokers operate in the digital asset space as a way for institutional traders, including digital asset native funds, to obtain leverage. Currently, the prime brokerage space for digital assets in the U.S. is nascent, potentially due to earlier regulatory regimes. Prime brokers offer financing, custody, and other order routing solutions across digital asset-linked derivatives and securities. In addition, borrowing against one digital asset holdings, primarily Bitcoin, has been popular among retail investors. DeFi also provides opportunities to borrow against digital asset collateral. While DeFi lending has focused on retail investors, DeFi protocol have recently been established to allow institutional investors to borrow against their digital assets. Trends in crypto lending. It looks like it was at its peak in 2021. Coming back up now, recently. Commercial applications, the activities described above, notably trading, constitute the majority of financial applications involving digital assets. Nevertheless, the significant number of consumer applications have employed blockchain technology to record ownership and allow users to engage in several different types of non-financial securities. For example, tokens may provide a utility, such as the ability to access, transact, or interact with goods and services within a particular blockchain network or application. Alternatively, they may grant a holder rights to participate in a predefined activity, such as attending a concert or other event. Other types of digital asset tokens may provide a holder with ownership value derived off-chain, distinct from any value derived from the blockchain itself, such as art, collectibles, memberships, and other tangible and intangible goods. Okay, next section goes into tokenization, and we're still part of the second section, the digital asset ecosystem. We know what tokenization is. It's a real-world asset. You can tokenize it. Use it on-chain, which is basically digitizing a stock, a commodity like gold, silver, or real estate. That's just digitizing. That's tokenization. And I saw earlier on X where Ondo had a big shout out on tokenization. If I save that. Can't remember if I did or not. Maybe not. Maybe we'll see it here. I don't want to spend too much time. There's 166 pages. We're kind of trying to get through this. Yeah, there's Ondo right there. So Ondo is an issuer. Right in the middle. The issuer converts real-world assets into digital representations on the blockchain. Ondo handles the price feeds, the smart contracts, the assets in custody, and the third-party oversight. And flowing into the issuer is traditional financial assets available on traditional financial rails that only move 9 to 5 during the weekdays, like stocks, fixed income, commodities, real estate, alternative assets. Now they're going to be digitized. That's a big shout out to Ondo. They're the only issuer here that's being shown. And from Ondo, you get tokenized financial assets available on blockchain rails that can move 24/7 instead of 9 to 5. Global access, self-custody, 24/7 movement. The regulatory structure of tokenization is determined by what asset is tokenized. not the mere process of tokenizing the asset. They tend to be regulated as securities. When tokenized instruments have been regulated, they tend to be regulated as securities, as much of the current volume in tokenization falls with underlying assets that are securities. Additional non-security uses of tokenization include tokenized commodities, tokenized non-financial assets like commercial real estate. We just said that. This goes through some risks to consumers and market participants, custody risk, fraud and cybersecurity risk, data privacy risks, operational risks. Cryptocurrency and the technical standard landscape, the role of technical standards and NIST, the National Institute of Standards Technology. We know that, I think it was, Ripple was part of NIST. Technical standards, it's all about the standards, ISO standards, pre-standardization research, representing industry and national interests. NIST supports the U.S. industry-led, market-driven, and voluntary approach to international standards development. Okay, so NIST is just I'm thinking about the futures for Ripple. They're part of the future standards. I can't remember the name of the body. Technical standards and digital assets. Of course, we're using the Institute of Electronics, the Organization for Standardization, the International Electrotechnical Commission, the World Wide Web Consortium. There's your ILP, the World Wide Web Consortium. They own the ILP now, Interledger Protocol. The Internet Research Task Force and the Internet Engineering Task Force. Technical standards and post-quantum cryptography. Quantum computing could jeopardize security. Quantum computers exploit quantum mechanical phenomena to solve mathematical problems that are difficult or intraceable for modern computers. That includes the problem of deriving a private key from a public key. Such development would fundamentally threaten all encrypted financial transactions, from bank transfers to credit card payments to blockchains. What's up, Maximum FOMO? Good to see you. Checking in and headed to the beginning. Cheers. Oh, yeah, enjoy. We went over a lot at the beginning already. This is going to be a long stream. I'm trying to kind of summarize it, though. For digital assets in particular, anyone with a quantum computer or sufficient strength could derive any digital asset holder's private key from their public key and steal all the user's digital assets, potentially leading to widespread digital asset theft. While current quantum computers are far from powerful enough to break cryptographic keys, some experts estimate that cryptographically relevant quantum computers could emerge in the next 5 to 10 years. Cryptographers have not stood idly by to face this threat. To replace existing encryption algorithms, they have searched for mathematical problems that even quantum computers cannot solve efficiently. This has resulted in several post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. All right, that's good to hear. We heard that, we saw Schwartz a couple of years ago say that they could just update the consensus mechanism to a post-quantum crypto algo when it's time, but it wasn't necessary yet. But you know how fast this stuff goes. What's that one company? Is it DLive? Yeah, they're already selling quantum computers to companies. Most of the companies, they're just using them to run simulations on, right? I think the one in Germany, they're using it to test magnets in healthcare. Magnets are used a lot for devices in healthcare. So they're running simulations on polarized magnetical fields using quantum computers. So, kind of scary though that you got any company can buy one now. In 2016, NIST launched the Post-Quantum Cryptographic Standardization Project to solicit, evaluate, and standardize one or more of these algorithms to replace current cryptographic standards. The goal was to develop a standard cryptographic system secure against quantum that could interoperate with existing communications and protocols on networks. And guys, if you're really worried about this stuff, and you've got some cold wallets, you can always create what we call a no-send wallet. Create a brand new wallet. Get your private keys. Send crypto to it, but never use it to send out. I mean, just keep sending to it. Not never. One day you're going to want to use it, of course, to send out, to use it to capture gains or value or whatever you're going to do with this crypto in the future. Once you use it, though, it's not technically quantum secured anymore. And you might need to create another no-send wallet to send the coins to keep them secure. So I definitely do that with some of the bigger bags. That's definitely a good thing to do, to have a no-send wallet just in case. It doesn't hurt anything. I've got one that I use, and I don't know. It's about the midnight airdrop that's coming. I guess it's based upon how many coins you have in the wallet. So I'd like to get that midnight airdrop from Cardano. So I may end up using my no-send quantum wallet to sign the transaction and then create a new no-send wallet and send those coins to. So it's a whole process. Depends on how deep you want to get with this stuff. But they say it's not necessary yet. And it's good that we're seeing them address it right here. So in August 2024, NIST finalized its principal set of post-quantum algorithms, Federal Information Processing Standards, Module Lattice-Based Key Encapsulation Mechanism Standard, and different standards. So module lattice-based and stateless hash-based digital standards. To defend against quantum threats, PQC will need to be adopted across the digital asset ecosystem before a cryptographically relevant quantum computer is developed. So it's not developed yet, they say. So what's that going to do with Bitcoin? Can Bitcoin be upgraded? I do not think so. Maybe. Actually, yeah. David Shum has created a double private key wallet. He runs the XX network. He's created that. He's the OG in the space as far as privacy. He's created a new Bitcoin wallet that produces two sets of keys. Or actually three, two sets of private keys, I mean. Of course, it has the same public key, but you get a regular private key and you get a quantum private key. So you can send your Bitcoin to the regular address, and it has it's a new wallet. Your new coins would go to it, and it would be quantum secured. So that's good to hear, though, that Bitcoin can also be quantum secured. I don't think the existing technology, though, can be. It's a new type of wallet. I forget the name of that wallet. I think it's going, though. I think it's in beta. Private actors should implement the PQC where practical, while working to identify and address cases where it will be more challenging to deploy. The transition to post-quantum cryptography represents a particularly large and urgent shift in the implementation and the use of cryptography, requiring the adoption and development of new cryptographic algorithms and technologies across our digital infrastructure at scale and schedule never before envisioned. That's huge. At scale and schedule never before envisioned. This will require flexible and agile approaches for building, maintaining, and operating systems that use cryptography. So that's good to see they're addressing this in this order, or in this report, I mean. Crypto agility refers to platforms' capacity to seamlessly replace crypto algorithms without disrupting operations or compromising security. So we, like again, Swartz said you just have to update a certain consensus mechanism to quantum. Hebrew says BSV and HBAR, I think, has built-in protection layer against quantum computing. Okay. Nice. Yeah, they should be. They should all be working on it, if you ask me. I saw the lady from Algorand say that their history is now quantum secure, but their wallets are not. And this was about a year ago, though, so maybe there's been an update on that. But yeah, only the history is quantum secured. Which I don't know what good that does. If something happens, well, they can always see who had it in the past, you know, where it was, which I guess is better than nothing for now. Distributed ledgers face unique challenges in becoming cryptographically agile. Permissionless blockchains require consensus among thousands of nodes with no central authority to coordinate the updates. Well, that's why you need a new wallet like David Shaw's if you got Bitcoin. It's a whole new wallet instead of updating the old wallets. Additionally, the immutable nature of blockchains means that all past transactions will have to remain valid, even after transitioning to the new cryptographic scheme, and preserving the integrity of decades of past data requires complex mechanisms. I saw where Stellar has a new, their new upgrade, I think it's for this. It's a new way to access the history. I'm sure they probably had to make it more efficient because these history nodes are huge, some of them. It's a lot of data and more coming in every second, you know. So the United States should lead the way and further digital asset standards. Okay, well, this is all about standards and especially for quantum. All right. Chapter 3, Digital Asset Market Structure. Here we go. I guess you could say this is like the Clarity Act. A lot of this is going to coincide with the Clarity Act, which has been termed the Market Structure Act as well, I think. Bradley says AI says that midnight could be cross-chain surveillance disguised as an airdrop. I'm not taking it. Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that. Good point, Bradley. Cross-chain surveillance disguised as an airdrop. Yeah, we'll let a lot of other people try that first before I even think about it. You know, I'm always do that with everything. 'Cause most of that stuff, it lasts for a while. So give it some time, I would say. Cross-chain surveillance disguised as an airdrop. I know one thing, guys. Be careful out there with NFT airdrops. That's on the, who was that? Papa on the boardroom said that was on the Secret Service's website. Be aware of malicious NFT airdrops. You think you're getting an NFT? No, you're signing something that gives away your private keys to your wallet. Market structure. Okay, let's not spend too much time on the intro. It talks about Satoshi, centralized and decentralized exchanges, rapid growth. American markets need to be the deepest and most liquid in the world. That's right. That's the point. That's the holy grail right there. The deepest and most liquid markets. And that's why you need a super DEX like XRP, guys. Something that's going to bridge everything and make it liquid. Both the SEC and the CFTC have taken strong initial steps. SEC actions, CFTC actions. We won't read through that. Establishing a taxonomy for digital assets. A proverbial minefield for honest actors trying to lead the industry forward. A clear, agreed-upon taxonomy is essential to ensure both the healthy development of digital asset ecosystem and consumer and investor protection. It's just saying, what we need to do. Below, discussing the asset classes into three categories: security tokens, commodity tokens, and tokens for commercial and consumer use. That sounds like peer-to-peer, right? Commercial and consumer use. We're going to be able to should be able to go to a business and pay with anything, That just breaks down the different tokens. Security tokens. Just trying to skim through for you guys. Just a lot to read through. The SEC continues to use the Supreme Court's Howey test to analyze whether a contract, transaction, or scheme is an investment contract. And they need to update to the Ripple test. A digital asset that is a note or a debt instrument presumptively is a security. This presumption may be rebutted through the family resemblance test. Okay, I haven't heard of that one. The family resemblance test, by showing that the note strongly resembles one of the several types of notes that is issued in connection with typical commercial transactions, and accordingly is accepted from the definition of a security. So you know what else is a note? That's the dollar. A dollar is a debt instrument. That's cash. So there's going to be digital assets that are cash, right? That's what this is saying. Any platform that operates an exchange must register as a national securities exchange. I think this is for security tokens. Yeah, we're under the security token headline here. And then it carves out notes out of security tokens. And if it passes the family resemblance test, it's a note. And if it's a security token, it must register as a national securities exchange. And I believe that's even if it's on chain. I think it has to be, if it's a security and it's on chain, it still needs to go and register, as far as I'm seeing here. And that's why they're carving out exemptions for some of these other ones. And some of them are commodities like Bitcoin. That's the whole reason they want to be commodities, to not have to register with the SEC. And that's why Corium is the compliance layer for the XRP ledger, because it is registered when it's used through Texture Capital and Solotex for all the security tokens that are going to be traded online in August, they say. Any intermediaries acting as a broker or dealer in digital assets that are securities in interstate commerce are required to register with the SEC and are subject to SEC oversight. Traditionally, brokers dealers maintain customer accounts and exercise certain levels of control over customers' assets through custodial arrangements. Absent an exemption, that's a big deal there. The exemption they're about to carve out for some of these tokens, some of these native assets. Absent the exemption, such intermediaries are also required to become members of FINRA and are subject to FINRA oversight. As a self-regulatory organization, FINRA is self-regulatory. That's crazy. I thought they were under the Treasury, FINRA. FINRA writes and enforces its own rules for member firms subject to federal security laws and are subject to SEC oversight. What's up, Slow Flow Digital? Glad you're chiming in on the chat, my man. Just looking over the separation, guys, how they're separating security tokens. If there's a security token, it looks like even if it's on chain, it needs to be registered. You know, it's a security. It's not a native digital asset. It's not a cryptocurrency. Just a digital security is all it is. And you're not going to be able to get these digital securities because they're permissioned from what I'm seeing. Digital securities are going to be permissioned only. Right? That's the way I'm seeing it. And you got to be registered as a broker dealer. That's not like peer-to-peer. Are we? So we're not going to be able to trade these securities peer-to-peer, are we? I don't know. Seems like if we get them, we'll be able to use them. Or maybe they'll have to be permissioned. That's wild. We know that Corium even has geofence tokens where you can't send the token outside of the United States. Isn't that wild? What's up, Rotisserie Bear? Man, there's a lot to wrap our heads around. That's why I'm doing this, guys. You guys that are watching, how many we have watching now? 15 watching. How many people are into crypto and not even interested in this stuff? They'll find out about it when they're made to do something, right? But we want to know on the back end what's going on. Market participants who use broker-dealers with the SEC to custody their securities benefit from the protections, though, provided by the federal securities laws, including consumer protection rule. Any SEC-regulated entities that are defined as financial institutions are subject to these requirements as well. Wow, there's a lot going on when you're a security. That's why we need to get this exemption for some of these coins. Calling from the Blue Crew, right on, Rotisser. Oh, wow, yeah, these security tokens, that's something else. How they're going to do that. How are they going to limit peer-to-peer trading of security tokens? Well, that's when you come into permission dexes, like, and even permissioned. I have an old Stellar wallet where I can't even. I've got I forget the name of the token, and I'm walled off now. I can't even sell it. It's permissioned now. I can't even do anything with it. So maybe they're waiting for these laws and rules to come out before they allow the trading again on that token. Who knows? Tokenized securities. I'm sick of reading about tokenized securities. We got to get through this thing. So we're going to skip over the rest of that. Because that's what we've been talking about. Why are they separating that? Companies are interestingly using blockchain tech. Tokenization does not affect the substance of the security issued. Yeah, it's no different. It's just easier to move 24/7. It does not, nor does it use the blockchain by an issuer or its agent giving rise to a new different type of asset. So it's the same thing as an old security. Yeah. SEC has exemptive authority. Yeah, we know they're going to be carving out exemptions. Non-security digital assets that are subject of an investment contract. This should be interesting here. Let me see if I can do a little auto read on this, save my voice for a minute.
Strengthening American.
Oh, no. It went all the way back to the beginning. Okay. Where were we at? 1 second. Staking protocols, trading. Custody and wallets. Where were we at? Almost there. There we go. Market structure. Tokenized securities. There we go. Back on track now. Non-security digital assets that are subject of an investment contract. Virtually any type of good, right, service, or interest can be represented as a digital asset on a blockchain or similar digital distributed ledger technology network. Although many digital assets are not securities, persons may distribute non-security digital assets as part of a contract, transaction, or scheme that satisfies the element of the investment contract definition under Howey, and thus as part of a security digital asset such as network tokens that are offered or sold as a subject of an investment contract may be separable from the investment contract in some or all later transactions. Digital asset market participants, including issuers, trading venues, and early-stage purchasers, face the resulting challenge of determining when a non-security digital asset subject to an investment contract separates from the investment contract. Wow, that's a lot right there. And that's been the whole Ripple test. So why do you think we've been going through this Ripple test, guys? That's it right there. Digital asset market participants, including issuers like Ripple, trading venues, and early-stage purchasers like us, face the resulting challenge of determining when a non-security digital asset subject to an investment contract separates from the investment contract. As market participants attempt to deal with this issue on their solutions, the SEC may consider using an existing authority to further address it. The SEC could provide a tailored registration regime for certain digital asset securities and appropriately condition safe harbor from securities registration for transactions involving digital assets that are or might be subject to an investment contract, such as safe harbor would afford the issuers time to progressively deliver functionality for digital asset or decentralize a network or application, while providing material information to investors about the digital asset. It just goes through the safe harbor. Wow, that's a lot to read there. Rotisserie Bear, I only joke about Wind Moon. I feel like I wait a long time and I'm next. Yeah, we're due, aren't we, guys? We just need them to work out all this stuff. And this is the good step towards that. Got to have these regulations in place. Digital assets with intrinsic characteristics of an enumerated type of security under federal digital security laws. What is enumerated? Let's see. Depending on their intrinsic characteristics, certain digital assets may independently satisfy the definition of a security under the federal security laws. For example, There may be a certain hybrid or multi-use tokens with functionality that also contains the features of a common stock, debt, or derivative of a security. God, this is getting in the weeds here. It's getting complicated. In regard, the SEC may consider an assortment of potential solutions, which might include exemptive relief or other actions to address securities surrounding such hybrid or multi-use tokens. So, you got tokens that can be used for multiple things, basically. So it looks like more exemptions. Commodity tokens. Of course, many digital assets fall outside the definition of security and many of the laws that govern securities transactions. This subsection provides an overview of the market structure for non-security digital assets and frameworks under which such assets could be regulated. Certain digital assets may be commodities underlying a regulated derivatives transaction or may represent the derivative itself. It's just saying the CFTC regulates these commodity tokens. All right, let's see how much further I can go here, guys. We're only through page 53 of 166. I know the ending, the last 1/3 of this is about taxation. So I don't know if we get to that. Let's just kind of try to summarize it as I go. It's a lot to read through. 166 pages. Wow. Network tokens, sometimes called a protocol token, refers to a token that is intrinsically connected to the functioning of a decentralized network. To the extent that the token's network is sufficiently decentralized, its continued value is not dependent on the intervention of or control of a single person or group. Some network tokens are used to pay transaction fees, gas fees, or to stake to secure the network's consensus. Others grant voting rights in DeFi protocols. Okay, we know what network tokens are. So what are they doing with those? Unlike securities, network tokens do not typically grant equity, debt, or profit-sharing rights. Their value is not derived from a corporate issuer's revenue, but from the utility of the network. For example, demand for block space or voting power. When no single company holds control the supply or demand of a token and the token is essential to the ongoing operation of the blockchain network, it begins to resemble a commodity or a type of operational utility. Efforts to regulate network tokens should focus on ensuring that tokens, even if essentially issued as part of an investment contract in a securities transaction, are not classified as securities. Well, duh. We knew that. Once the network becomes fully functional and sufficiently decentralized. Oh wow, they've taken Bill Hemmons' words. Fully functional and sufficiently decentralized. So once these network tokens and their actual network becomes fully functional and decentralized, certain criteria determining what constitutes fully functional and sufficiently decentralized should be clear and objective to ensure fairness and to provide market participants with certainty. So that's just saying if they are fully functional and sufficiently decentralized, that they're not security tokens. If they're network tokens. Wow. Tokens for commercial and consumer use. A commercial or consumer use token provide access to some specific good, service, or privilege, it is subject to other federal and state laws applicable to commercial transactions. These tokens are usually non-fungible, meaning they cannot be easily interchanged or substituted with others like digital assets. A commercial use token is a digital representation of a traditional commercial instrument, such as a warehouse receipt, documents of title, bills of lading, event tickets, memberships, and identity credentials. Unlike network tokens, these assets are not often associated with a decentralized network protocol and are usually issued by a centralized entity. Consumer use tokens also include arcade tokens and loyalty tokens that users can redeem for consumptive purpose, usually within a closed ecosystem. Example, these include video game rewards or tokenized loyalty points. These are going to be huge. There are a lot of these. Tokenized loyalty points, video game rewards, that's currency in itself right there. Both of those are currencies. So these state laws apply. Federal and state laws apply to these. Usually non-fungible. That makes sense because they're not, you might not only be in a game where a couple thousand people use it. It might not be very liquid, that's non-fungible. Or it might only be able to be interchanged with the actual game itself or the airline rewards. Maybe you can't trade it peer to peer. Wow, there's so much of this stuff, guys. Other variations of consumer use tokens include collectible tokens, such as tokenized artwork, trading cards, or other tokenized versions of traditional collectible items. Often tokens serve as a record of ownership or otherwise associate ownership rights with a digital identity. The value of redeemable tokens is derived from the use they provide or the holder. The use they provide the holder when they redeem for the relevant good, service, or privilege. Other commercial use tokens may have no intrinsic market value. Example is tokens recording identity credentials. Regulations should focus on consumer protections and ensuring these type of tokens are marketed with appropriate disclosures while allowing companies to experiment with blockchain-based systems to provide clarity to market participants and ensure innovative use of blockchain tech for consumer use can continue to grow. Regulators may consider some type of guidance, safe harbor, or exemptive relief for this asset class. So it doesn't show who will regulate it. It just says relevant federal and state laws apply to these commercial transactions. That's interesting. Enabling the trading of digital assets at the federal level to ensure American businesses can compete internationally. The SEC and the CFTC should use their existing rulemaking and exemptive authorities to enable the trading of digital assets. SEC should consider using its rulemaking and exemptive authority under the SEC Act to advance the following initiatives. Establish a fit-for-purpose exemption from registration. Establish a time-limited safe harbor. Establish a safe harbor for certain airdrops from characterization as sales. Also consider exemption for distribution of digital assets by decentralized physical infrastructure providers, DePIN. And the SEC should also consider rulemaking for an exemptive authority for enabling non-security digital assets that are tied to investment contracts and provide relief for certain DeFi services from broker-dealers. There's a lot of exemptions going on here. That's good, though. Amend regulations ATS, or to create a framework similar to the regulation ATS that would better accommodate trading of non-security digital assets alongside securities under a framework regulatory that's fit for purpose for digital asset trading. Yeah, these securities alongside them are non-securities. It's because they're paired. Securities are paired with non-securities. So when they're in a centralized environment, this is going to apply. Your digital asset is going to need to be paired with a security. Also create a conditional innovation exemption under the Exchange Act to allow SEC registrants to engage in innovative new business models. Wow. There's a lot of orders directing the SEC to do a lot of work. So, that's why it's taking a while, guys. There's a lot of things they need to do. There's a lot of exemptions they need to carve out. I couldn't imagine having to figure all this stuff out and try to fit it all into the legacy financial system. Also, the SEC should consider rulemaking exemptive authority and provide clarity on custody of digital assets, and evaluate whether certain state chartered trusts should be deemed qualified custodians. Now to the CFTC, they should provide guidance to designate contract markets regarding the listing of leveraged margin or financed spot retail commodity transactions. Provide guidance on how digital assets may be considered commodities to the extent that digital asset investment vehicles or their managers may be considered commodity pools, or prompt registration of commodity pool operators. Collaborate with FinCEN to provide guidance regarding customer identification programs. Enable firms to provide bundled trading and custody services. Provide clarity with the applicability of various CFTC registrants. Requirements to DeFi activities, smart contract protocols, or decentralized autonomous organizations consistent with technology neutral principles. Provide guidance to FCMs in calculating and administering segregation obligations when digital assets are held on behalf of customers, including separate account treatment. Provide clarity on haircuts on digital assets held by registered intermediaries for purposes of calculating and reporting margin. Review the application of eligible depository rules on accounts holding digital assets as collateral. Provide guidance for DCO acceptance of digital asset collateral, including financial resource requirements. Provide guidance on the adoption of tokenized non-cash collateral. Provide guidance on classification of swaps on digital assets to address application of margin, reporting, and other requirements. Consider allowing the use of blockchain tech to satisfy record keeping. Guys, if you can know all this stuff, you could probably get a job at so many different places. There's a lot to learn right here. There's all kinds of firms that need this info, that are studying it hard right now. So a lot of ordering these regulators, the SEC and the CFTC, on what they need to do. Establish a safe box or safe harbor. They should provide a clear pathway for entities to graduate from the safe box or safe harbor. establish a category of eligible contract participants with the ability to engage in certain types of derivatives, including perpetual contracts, through additional regulated intermediaries. And then longer-term considerations, they should explore offering flexibility to allow registrants to offer multiple services within a single-use interface. Creating a lasting framework for digital asset market structure. Due to the underlying distributed ledger technology, digital asset markets function differently from markets for stocks, bonds, commodities, and derivatives. Traditional finance markets require a series of third-party intermediaries between a buyer and a seller to execute and settle a trade. In digital asset markets, programmable smart contracts allow buyers and sellers of certain digital assets on decentralized exchanges to be matched and ownership to change hands without custodial third parties. Other platforms offering trading of digital assets and structured in a more centralized way, but differences remain that need to be addressed in crafting market structure framework. The House of Reps Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, which is going to the Senate now, it's called Clarity. It proposes a division of digital asset market jurisdictions between the SEC and the CFTC. It provides the right of Americans to self-custody their digital assets by requiring the SEC and the CFTC to jointly promulgate rules for portfolio margining. It facilitates a system where investors, both retail and institutionals, can efficiently trade digital assets without artificial cost imposed by regulatory barriers. Yeah, that's right. We don't need artificial cost imposed by regulators. Clarity also importantly recognizes decentralized governance systems, which are an innovation to how individuals collectively reach agreement on development and administration of blockchain systems. Much as joint stock corporations provide an avenue for shareholders to engage in common undertakings, decentralized governance systems are a further evolution in decision making. Clarity recognizes the promise of decentralized finance and the ability of software to allow individuals to freely transact with one another. Lastly, Clarity provides legal certainty in highlighting the treatment of digital assets on banking institutions' balance sheets, providing federal preemption for jurisdiction over digital asset intermediaries, and expanding the criteria by which institutions can be considered qualified custodians. Altogether, Clarity represents an excellent foundation for digital asset market structure in the United States. However, the working group encourages Congress to consider a handful of additional factors when finalizing the legislation to ensure American markets for digital assets help enshrine the U.S. as the crypto capital of the world. So here's a few recommendations for the Clarity Act. Because, of course, if the House didn't put it in here, the Senate's going to have to add it. And therefore, it would be sent back to the House if the Senate changes it. Let's read through this. So they say the CFTC should have clear authority to regulate spot markets. SEC and CFTC registrants should be permitted to engage in multiple business lines under the most efficient licensing structure possible. So businesses should be able to use both the SEC and the CFTC. And of course, they're going to need to do that if they're going to pair these digital asset securities with native cryptocurrencies. They're going to have to deal with the CFTC and the SEC, right? It should avoid regulatory arbitrage between the CFTC and SEC and CFTC digital asset regulatory regimes. Avoiding arbitrage between the two regulators. Interesting. Understanding that the regulation of digital asset securities is necessarily different than that applied to non-security digital assets. Wow. It should have the flexibility to offer a broad range of digital asset and other regulated products. Registrants should be able to offer trading of digital asset securities and be able to engage in non-security digital asset transactions persistent to the licensing structure. CFTC registrants should be able to offer trading of digital commodity derivatives, retail digital commodity transactions, and other CFTC digital jurisdictional products alongside non-security digital assets. Congress permits activity in a non-security digital asset outside the CFTC registrants. Congress should direct the market regulator leading the rulemaking process to set rules for the market conduct and activities for non-security digital asset persistent in consultation with the SEC and CFTC. Rules for digital assets should include portfolio margin standards. SEC and CFTC should adopt rules ensuring consumer asset segregation for digital assets. Trading venues for non-security digital assets should be required to report market data subject to reporting obligations by the CFTC. Congress should provide that federal law preempts state law with respect to securities and commodities laws applicable to the CFTC and the SEC registered intermediaries, including the areas of state virtual currency businesses, blue sky, and commodity broker laws. Here it just goes through guidelines for market intermediaries, digital asset platforms, brokers, dealers, custodians, and other registrants should be subject to a tailored registration theme that is a fit for purpose for the SEC, CFTC as appropriate. Intermediaries should be allowed to lend against net and hedge securities against non-securities as risk characteristics permit. Issuers of digital asset securities and securities involving digital assets should be subject to disclose requirements that are appropriately tailored to address the novel characteristics of digital assets and blockchain tech. I'm just kind of skimming through the highlighted portions here. For over-the-counter block trades of digital assets that occur off-chain through regulated intermediaries, there should be similar reporting and disclosure requirements to those that apply to similar activities in traditional markets. Okay, that's pretty big there. We need it. They're going to have to report over-the-counter trades, it looks like, for institutions. So that's going to limit a lot of the wash trading that's been going on from the over-the-counter markets into the public markets, I bet. Interesting. Digital asset trading platforms, broker-dealers, and the other registrants should disclose the capacity in which they are acting on behalf of the customer. Trading platforms should be permitted to custody digital assets with appropriate controls. Market intermediaries should be subject to principles-based rules regarding the margin and leverage they can extend to retail participants. Congress should consider extending Exchange Act Section 31 fee structures to all SEC registered products. Registrants should be required to adopt best practices for cybersecurity standards. Regulatory treatment for DeFi. Here we go. This is pretty important here. And again, this is for entities using DeFi, right? I don't think I'm going to be able to read much more. This sounds important here. Let's get through this. Regulatory treatment for DeFi. By embracing this and supporting the option for DeFi for investors, entities. Let's see. By embracing this and supporting the option for DeFi for investors, policymakers can help position the U.S. as a leader in the global crypto economy, encouraging the development of regulatory frameworks that balance innovation with security will pave the way for a robust financial future. DeFi means everything, guys. You start putting these tokenized assets in DeFi. The integration of DeFi into mainstream finance has the potential to unlock new economic opportunities and drive significant advancements across various industries and sectors. There are ongoing discussions regarding whether non-controlling blockchain developers and DeFi service providers and DeFi apps or front ends can or should be required to comply with institutional obligations under the Bank Secrecy Act. So there are ongoing discussions regarding this, whether the peer-to-peer, it looks like, should be under BSA, either as a money service business, broker-dealer, FMC, FCMs, or some other category of financial institution under BSA. Should such considerations are discussed further in the further improvements to the AML CFTC regime under Chapter 6, covering topics related to countering illicit finance. So they're not really touching on that. It just says ongoing discussions whether DeFi should be required to comply. As contemplated in the provisions of clarity, Congress should consider the following factors when determining the regulatory treatment of DeFi: the extent to which a given software application exercises control over the user's asset. Without the ability to exercise control over the assets or funds, a software application may not transmit money or exchange currency, and therefore might not be subject to the BSA and MSB. Importantly, without control, software applications generally lack the ability to misappropriate users' assets. The extent to which software application once built or deployed is technologically capable of being modified. So that's good to see there. And therefore might not be subject to BSA. We'll take that. Software applications in DeFi use smart contracts. In many cases, smart contracts cannot be modified or withdrawn once deployed. Implementing changes in those cases requires the creation of entirely new smart contracts. The operation of software application, including the smart contracts or the economics of the service more broadly, may be administered by a single actor or a group of actors. Congress should consider the degree to which a single actor or group of actors working together to upgrade software applications, smart contracts, or change its economics is in manner not previously disclosed in software protocol rules. So they're just talking about the structure, the DeFi structure, how much input it has from centralized entities, basically. Many DeFi protocols do not have the functional ability to register MSBs or otherwise comply with the obligations under BSA, while businesses, as described above, could register. Nevertheless, Congress could consider how obligations can be fit for purpose to the technology and embrace the unique characteristics of DeFi. There we go. That's kind of positive there, rather than placing the current financial regime on top of DeFi services. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Care should be taken to ensure actors are not permitted to structure products or subvert legal responsibilities. And then it goes into accounting recommendations. But my voice is about shot, guys. We got through 62 pages of it. I'm going to write that number down. 62. Pick up from there. I don't know if I read the rest of it on another day or what, but that we got the gist of it. We're on page 62. Let me see how much we got through here. We did the introduction, the digital asset ecosystem, the digital asset market structure, and we got into banking and digital assets themselves. And it looks like they're going to help out DeFi. You know, the DeFi platforms, they don't have a way to comply. So there's no way they can make DeFi comply with BSA. Only thing we didn't get to cover is current regulatory framework. We know all about that. Access to providing banking services, capital, and regulatory treatment, stablecoins and payments. Payment systems, that might be interesting for stablecoins. Central bank digital currencies, they're going to try to ban those. Promoting competitiveness, countering illicit finance, and taxation we didn't get through. But I think we got through most of the important stuff, guys. And my voice is about shot. Oh, thanks, Lazer King. You did great. Appreciate that, man. D Cartel 62. Yeah. 62 pages. Yeah, that's crazy. How long have we been streaming here? Let's see. Where do I even find that out? I don't know. Oh, yeah, I'm on Rumble or not. I forgot I was streaming on Rumble. 2 hours and 24 minutes. Good Lord. Ooh, a lot to get through, but I'm glad I could do it online with you guys. I know it was a lot to listen to. Hopefully I was coming through clear. But, you know, this is something I need to keep up with if I'm going to keep doing these streams, you know. Knowledge is power, guys. We will see you on the next one. MrConectr out, guys. Peace. I'm going to jam it on the way out.